we're the rollout. We're back. I'm Linsay Rousseau.
And I'm Genevieve Marie. Obi-Wan
Kenobi.
The most important question of our day, the most important question of the decade is Obi-Wan Kenobi. What did we think?
Yes. So this is obviously the show that has been anticipated for 20 years, I would say. People have been clamoring for an Obi-Wan spinoff, and I think we mentioned this in our last episode, since the prequels came out. And we got it.
We did. Okay.
We did.
Honestly, the fact that we got it is somewhat of a win, because I actually never thought that this day would come. However, now that it is here, we
have thoughts.
Here's the thing, is that this was not like a garbage pile. That was the thing, is that like I actually feel like a lot of people have been saying it needed to be just a 2-episode special.
Right. Or a feature film, a 2-hour
feature film would have been absolutely lovely. Just a feature film for Disney Plus.
Right.
I would have loved that. And I think that they had enough content and enough story to be told within a feature film, like 2.5 hours, 2 hours, 2.5 hours.
Yep.
You could have knocked everything out of the park. And I would be interested to see if somebody out there is actually making a like 2.5 hour.
Oh, there is. So
okay, there is.
You know Coleman. Okay, well, our friend Coleman, this
really?
is what he does. I'm assuming he's already on this because he does cuts of everything.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so he's working.
I'll message him after this and be like, "You've made the feature film Obi-Wan cut, right?" Yeah. That was the issue. There was a lot of unnecessary padding, and again, the acting was stellar. I will say, as we have said about some other shows in the past, if the acting was not as strong as it had been, we probably would have given up on it. But the writing, there were some continuity issues. There was some, wait a second, Vader's afraid of fire issues. I mean, there was just some things that just really stuck out to, even if you weren't an OG diehard Star Wars fan, I feel like a 10-year-old can be like, why didn't Darth Vader just walk across the fire and get him? Like, I think there's questions like that.
Yeah. A lot of sense was kind of shelved in order to keep the stakes high and to keep the cat and mouse game of Obi-Wan versus Darth Vader going for this show. Mm-hmm. The problem is I think Darth Vader as a concept, as a character, and especially at this point in his life, is so strong that when you pit him against other people, other opponents, it's very hard to keep the tension, because in your mind, you're like, you have the Rogue One scene, you have everything that came,
what's going to happen in 30 years,
what's going to happen, but you also know that he will cut people down like they're nothing, that it's just a scythe in a field, that he'll just mow you down. And so when you have this sort of Obi-Wan Kenobi, like this entire show, I say, is Obi-Wan gets his groove back. When you have Obi-Wan probably what would arguably be the lowest point in his life, having to not be connected with the Force, having not had picked up a lightsaber for years, and having not had the training and the practice that he normally,
and no friends, no contact with anyone.
Exactly.
His master, he can't even communicate with his master, which is very heartbreaking.
And then he has to face Darth Vader, the creature ultimately that he created, the monster that he created. But he's at his all-time low, but we know that Darth Vader is basically riding high on like at least the fact that he's going to get his revenge, and he's at like the peak level of his physicality and his skill level. And so to make that fight believable, we got the Lake of Fire, to kind of break that up. But I feel that there could have been something else that they could have done. I'm not saying like,
we're not saying we have the answers, but yeah, I totally
I'm not saying we have the answers. I'm not saying like do the regular like, oh, like just kick Obi-Wan off like a large hill or a cliff, and then Darth Vader is just like, all right, well that's done, because you still have the Force, and Darth Vader could have just
like when he buried him in the dirt, I'm like, wait, you're just gonna assume that did it?
Falling rocks, the falling rocks thing. There is so
like,
many
unless you see a body.
There's so many cliche ways to kill off a character. Falling rocks is one of them. Yeeting them off a cliff is another. I kind of felt that way with Doctor Strange and Wanda with the they're like, I feel like there needed to be a more emotional weight or something. I don't know. However, there was a way to handle this fight, and I think that this kind of, it didn't fail, but it also hung in sort of a liminal space of, this is kind of a murky way to keep the story going, because anybody would know that Obi-Wan would have just been completely eviscerated by Darth Vader at this point. So then you have to add, Darth Vader is afraid of fire, or Darth Vader doesn't want to walk across the fire, or maybe if you can twist it in your mind that Darth Vader's character motivations was like, I'll let him go this time, maybe not this way. I don't know. Like maybe not kill him this way. Maybe it's got to be something different.
Or at the end of the day, neither of them can actually commit to killing the other, because again, we end the series. What I will say from like a performance standpoint, people are now saying that lightsaber battle is now going down in the annals of Star Wars history as one of the greatest fight scenes of all time. And I will say, from a stylistic choreography element, it was a fantastic looking lightsaber scene, but it ended almost essentially exactly the way episode 3 ended, with him taking Vader to the brink and then walking away. And I'm like, dude, you see how much damage he's done?
But that's because we have more movies to get to.
Exactly. We have
to have the Kenobi spinoff and the spinoff after that. And that's kind of the problem with doing prequels, is that ultimately where the story needs to go.
Right.
How you like. And yes, there's a lot to say about like, it's all about, not the end, but it's the journey. Like, yes, I get that. But at the same time, as an audience member, you can divine a lot of what's going to happen because you know how it ends. And not only that, is that it stymies the creativity of the writers and the creators, because they can't take it in any direction other than
the one that's already laid out.
That's already laid out, getting the means to the end. And I was also going to say that the first fight, the first confrontation between Obi-Wan and Vader, I understand is supposed to set up the last one.
Yes.
But at the same time, I kind of would have liked it if it didn't happen, because the last confrontation, the last fight, that was what I think saved the entire show for most people. Is the last 2 episodes of the show were by and large the best ones, and they stood out as being the best written, the best acted. I'm not going to say it's because Child Leia wasn't in it. Child actors are very difficult.
Very difficult. And she was adorable.
She was very cute.
But
I feel like, and I also know that it's kind of funny because you give Obi-Wan the 2 things that he like despises dealing with the most, and that's children and droids. And so and he has to deal with both of them when it comes to Leia. So I get the dynamic and I get the intention, but then you also, with the addition of Leia, you have the fact that like she pretends not to know who he is in episode in when she's an adult. And it makes it so strange.
Because, in the original series, he was a friend of my father's, if I'm remembering correctly. He was a friend of my father's, which is how she knows how to reach out to him. And I'm like, she's old enough. What did we say she is? 10? 10. She's got those memories. I'm like, if she was 5, maybe we could say she didn't remember him.
In the absolute formative years of her life, if she's going to remember and respect and hold anybody up on a pedestal, like as a figure to like emulate yourself off of, it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, and then you have her like comforting fucking Luke on the Millennium Falcon, being like, oh, I'm sorry this old man died. And it's like, okay, at that point, she has more rapport, more history, more emotions attached, more stakes attached to Obi-Wan Kenobi than Luke ever possibly could.
Yep.
At this point. And now, because we want to have this emotional connection in this storyline in the Kenobi series, we kind of like, they absolutely messed up the timeline, and it just makes Leia just kind of seem like an alien creature that is devoid of emotion. And because you already have people who are kind of who have commented about like, yeah, she lost Alderaan and she lost her entire family, and she gets over it very quickly in service of comforting Luke, the main character. And now you're adding on more on top of this with losing Obi-Wan Kenobi, somebody
so like
he has rapport with. And so
so when Obi-Wan dies in the original trilogy, and you know, I feel like Leia should be more devastated than Luke should have, because like she was a father figure, not a father figure, but you know, like she was like the uncle who saved her. Like those memories would have implanted. That was a serious journey they went on. And the fact that she, now the way they've set it up, she has no feelings towards Ben
or memory
or anything. Yeah. And that's the other thing is with, you know, it always bothered me when the prequels came out. You know, Leia has that line when she's talking to Luke, I think when they're on Endor, and he's like, hey, do you remember your mother? I have no memories of her. And she's like, yeah, just flashes. And I'm like, is she forced remembering her mom? Because we've now set up that she never knew her mom. And if what Obi-Wan says is right, you know, obviously they never reveal who her real parents are. So I'm, you know, there's just some cognizant dissonance in some of these things.
Right. And, you know, I'm not going to bash on that too much.
No,
because of the fact that they need to be able to write stories, you know, they need to be able to, you know, go into these stories. And, you know, Luke and Leia are major players in Obi-Wan's life at this point, because that's the only thing that he had left to take care of and to watch over. You know, that was his only life's mission at that point, going to Tatooine. Not necessarily watching over Leia, I would say, because that was given to, you know, the Organas. That task was given to them. But like Luke, I know, and like also in the extended universe books and stuff, like now they're the legacy books or whatever.
Legacy, yeah.
Like there are moments in which old Ben and Luke have interactions, but they're very small, and you know, they're like piecemeal, because then Luke obviously grows up and he's like, yeah, that crazy old man in the desert, old Ben.
Yeah.
You know, but
not the guy that my uncle seemed to know.
Right.
Who I met when I was 10.
But anyway,
saved my life.
Continuity errors besides, like, I think that they probably were just like, fuck it, we don't care anymore. Like, people are going to.
We've already broken the timeline. Who's going to care?
Right. And at that point, you know, like you're gonna be making mistakes. Yeah. So besides the continuity errors, let's look at the content. Let's look at what was inside. I have this dreadful feeling that most of the Star Wars shows and prequels and spinoffs and all of that we're going to get nowadays, unless it's the Mandalorian, but even that can go, you know, the way of a trash fire.
Well, and isn't next season of the Mandalorian's the last season?
Okay.
If I remember correctly, I believe they said that. Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong, audience, but I thought that was the case.
I don't know. I'm not following the news.
Until we get the Old Republic or the High Republic stuff, which gives us untethered fodder for stories, I think we're going to continue to have these problems.
Yeah. But my point is that I think we're going to have this sort of nightmarish world where we're going to have 6 episode series and only 2 or 3 out of them are going to be worthwhile, worth watching, because I don't think Disney really understands how to create a series. The Marvel stuff so far has been pretty good. It's been hit and miss. I will say.
I mean, Loki, Loki was supposed to be standalone. It was so successful. They've decided to make a sequel to that. We'll see how that goes. Moon Knight standalone. Check out our episode on that. We loved it. We hated it, things like that. So far, we're loving Miss Marvel, but, people are very hesitant about what's going to happen with She-Hulk. So, yeah.
Right. I'd say like it's 50-50. It's a roll of the dice for me when it comes to these series. And like with Moon Knight, I liked the end of Moon Knight. And I feel like that's why they released 4 screeners, 4 out of the 6 episodes to the media, as far as screeners to watch, because they also knew that the hook wasn't until way later in the series. Right. They knew what they were putting out there. And I feel like it's the same for Obi-Wan. It's the same. It's the same for the Book of Boba Fett. And the Book of Boba Fett, like, I didn't even like it until it became like a foray into the Mandalorian, season, whatever, their next season.
Yep.
And it was, the Book of Boba Fett was a mess. That was probably the worst thing they released on Disney Plus since releasing these short form TV shows.
Yep, exactly.
Whereas Obi-Wan Kenobi, I feel like I didn't really hate any of the episodes, but it felt like there was so much filler to get to the good stuff, to get to the end. And I don't think you needed that much setup to get to that really satisfying end.
Right.
It's like having a one-shot comic, or, just a graphic novel, mm-hmm. in which, you get that graphic novel, that's all it's standalone.
All
it's going to be, or you get that one-shot comic, or it's going to be like a run of maybe like 5 comics, and that's it. And Obi-Wan could have easily have been that, where it's just like,
right. Well, and this I think goes to the larger trend of studios doubling down on streaming and feeling like shows are now the future, feature films are the past, and there's perhaps less risk in doing a show. They're less likely to, they're less likely to do a feature film per se. The same argument was made for the same argument was made for Mike Myers' new show on Netflix. The Pentagram, or whatever it's called. It was a traditional Mike Myers film, a la Wayne's World. It absolutely should not have been a series because there was just so much repetition, but it would have made a great tight 85-minute feature film, but studios aren't putting out those Wayne's Worlds anymore. You know, they're not, for whatever reason. And so they're padding out these shows, I guess, to get more viewers, to get more revenue, whatever it is, as opposed to, like you said, just cutting it and making it a nice, tight feature.
Right. They want binge-worthy content. That's the problem, is that the more eyes that they have something on something, and the longer that they can keep those eyes on something, the better it is for them.
Right. So, and that'll take you to the next series that you'll need to watch, and the next.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of why we're getting this pull away from feature films and more push into film, into TV, film on TV. Right. And a lot of it is cheaper to do television, you know.
Well, that's arguable now, considering the money that Marvel and Disney, or I guess I should say Disney, are dropping. You know, the Mandalorian budget was astronomical. Loki was I mean, we're talking like, I know we said this during our Halo episode, it's like $10 million an episode, something crazy like that. So now I'm like, well, if it's $10 to $30 million an episode, are you saving money?
I think it's the investment.
That's true. Yeah.
I think it's the investment into something, because I mean, Disney Plus is all their own. It's not like they're paying Netflix or anybody to have their stuff on there, or vice versa.
And they're not dependent on ticket sales for revenue. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't have to be dependent on theaters. They don't have to be dependent on going to like Trailer Park and having them cut a trailer and then distributing that all over the place. Like the marketing and stuff gets to, you know, you get a par down on the marketing, you get a par down on how many outside hands are on the project, and how many outside hands you actually have to pay to, you know, market and distribute and do all these things with the product. So I think, and I could be wrong, that it's more so that all of that money, yes, it's invested, but it's invested back into the company and back into studios that are under the Disney corporate umbrella.
Right. Yeah. They're not having to pay out to anybody else. That's a really good point. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do we want to, so we've covered the issues we had with the Obi-Wan Vader, but the other big storyline in the show was the Inquisitors.
Yes, that's right.
Which is another issue that you're like, oh, there's no mention of the Inquisitors in episodes 4 through 9. And that was an interesting twist to find out that she had been one of the younglings that survived Vader's massacre.
Yeah. I forgot who it was. It was somebody on YouTube who called that early on.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I was like, yeah, they were right. And it makes perfect sense. And I thought that was an interesting way to go. I thought it was an interesting storyline, because then you kind of have this sort of mirror between like Vader and this one character, the Inquisitor. And I really, really, really never imagined that the last episode of Obi-Wan Kenobi was also going to be a home invasion story.
Right. So I did not see that either. Yeah.
And it was basically like they pulled a Skyfall where you're like, okay, so now we're going straight into like home invasion story, which I think is interesting because it did give some of the other players something to do.
Yeah.
And it gave them better characterization, like Lars and Aunt Beru. It gave them something more than just being cannon fodder for the first film.
Right.
And it really did kind of flesh out both of their stances on how to protect Luke and what was going too far. Like Uncle Owen has always been the like, I don't want to stick my nose into where, you know, I'm going to get in trouble or to make waves, where Aunt Beru is just like, no, we gotta, you know,
we are going to defend our castle. Yeah.
Defend the castle. We gotta stand up. And so I thought that was good. Whether or not, like, I thought that it was just very, very, I don't know. I have mixed feelings on how all of that went down, because I also felt like it was a setup to another spinoff for her.
Right.
I feel like this is how they left the show. They left the show with Obi-Wan being able to be brought back in for other things. They left the show open because you have Obi-Wan telling Bail Organa that, yeah, if you ever need me, like, give me a call. And he seems to be pretty gung-ho about like getting back into the fight and doing more things. And it only makes sense because it would feel a little odd for Obi-Wan to just kind of remain this like hermit hidden away after he's gone through and seen all of these acts of rebellion, all of these, you know, Underground Railroad things that he could also become a part of, that he could, you know, have a hand in helping. It would be kind of odd for him just to completely pull away and become a complete hermit again. So it opens up more opportunities for Obi-Wan to be brought back into more things. But like the fact that the seventh sister is also not dead, and that she has this rich backstory, and, you know, her and Obi-Wan, you know, come to an understanding. Obi-Wan gets his last sort of, you know, master Padawan teaching moment with her, which I thought was quite lovely.
Yeah, it really was.
That she can actually come back and, you know, be involved in future projects as well, which I thought she was, you know, I thought she was lovely. I really enjoyed watching her performance.
Yeah.
Because now that you knew the twist and you knew the backstory, her rage makes sense. And the fact that it is unbridled, like Anakin's, makes a lot of sense as well, because you have her killing the first, you know, the Grand Inquisitor in the first episode or the second episode, I don't remember, but she kills him and you're like, that kind of came out of nowhere. And it's like, but it didn't, you know, it was all in service of a grander plot of hers, but also it's a character flaw that she has because of her, you know, past trauma. So I liked that it actually had a point and purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? I mean,
I don't think, I mean, there is a lot to say.
There's a lot to say.
We
try to keep it to a half hour.
I don't want to ramble on.
No, I know. Yeah. I mean, all in all,
somebody else is going to say it and say it better. Yeah. So I'm just going to
if you love Star Wars, you're going to enjoy it. If you're able to put aside continuity issues and a couple padded episodes, the acting is really compelling. Obviously, Ewan McGregor can do no wrong in my eyes. The acting is compelling. It's not a dumpster fire like the Book of Boba Fett. It's also not season 1 of The Mandalorian. Yeah, it's just kind of somewhere in the middle. There's a comfort factor to it. You know, you kind of feel like you already know this world. Yeah.
If I could make a suggestion, if you're on the fence and you're like, I don't know if I want to do the time investment, just watch the last 2 episodes. Period.
Or maybe you can watch the first episode and the last 2, or
that's all you have to do is just watch the last 2 episodes. You won't be disappointed. And, you know, if you wanted to have extra context, then watch the whole thing. If you feel good just seeing like the final standoff, excellent. That's my suggestion anyway.
I agree. All right. Well, we're the rollout.
We are the rollout, and we will
geek with you
next
week.
That is correct.
Right, bye
In
everyone.
some form or
Some or another, yeah.